Oh, hi, everybody. I just wanted to thank everyone and welcome you to our first Lunch and Learn. We're really excited to bring this new way of engaging to those of you in our school community. I think, you know, there are lots of challenges right now, but there are silver linings, and one of them is that this new way of living and working has allowed us to think a little bit differently about how we use technology to share our school and what's going on with our friends and supporters. So we had a successful coffee and conversation, and just building on that has been terrific. So if you've joined us today, you already know a lot about Neighborhood House. You know we were one of the first public charter schools in the state of Massachusetts and in the country. You know that we have a 25-year history of educating Boston's youth. You know that we've nearly doubled in size over the last few years, and that we're super excited about graduating our first class of 12th graders next June. So we hope that these Lunch and Learns are going to go beyond those usual facts and figures, and that they're an opportunity for us to go deeper with you on aspects of our program that make Neighborhood House unique and special. Today's Lunch and Learn topic is distance learning, and leading the discussion today is our Chief Schools Officer, Sean Shirley-Davidson. I know many of you already know Sean, but I wanted, in the spirit of a true introduction, to tell you just a little bit about Sean. He has been with Neighborhood House almost since the beginning. Sean joined us in 1998 as a social studies humanities teacher. There's a little picture of young Sean over on the right-hand side with some of our early 8th grade graduates and staff. After some time in that teaching role, Sean moved on to become the associate dean, and then was the middle school principal from 2004 to 2017, our longest serving principal at the school. Both of Sean's children have attended Neighborhood House, and his daughter, Anna, is currently a 6th grader. So lots of NHCS ties. And without further ado, welcome, Sean, and turn the mic over to you.
Actually, I need to turn the unmic over to me so I can talk. Hello, everyone. Yes, thank you, Kate, for the embarrassing old picture. I don't know why she had to circle my face, because clearly I look the exact same. There's no difference at all. It's just a little grayer. So we're going to spend some time talking about what's happening in Neighborhood House. It's just to sort of frame a little bit. I want to sort of open it up for a little bit of a discussion first, then we'll go into the Neighborhood House model, and then we'll kind of come back to a discussion as a group. You know, a few questions I just had for you guys to think about, so you can kind of answer, like Nicole was saying. You could throw something in the chat. You can use the raise your hand feature, but because there's a lot of us I can see, you could actually just literally raise your hand, like in the old-timey days, you know, where you just did things in real life. One of the things I'm just curious about, you guys are reading a lot of the news. Some of you have kids in school. And I'm wondering, sort of, what are you hearing about how different districts, either, you know, in the state or across the country, are dealing with school closure? And then what do you think, as we've been dealing with a lot of the challenges and barriers for distance learning, what do you think has been coming up for barriers or challenges for students and families and teachers? So basically, sort of, what are you hearing and experiencing yourself around distance learning? All right, I'm gonna open it up to the group here. So remember, hand, or I can just call on you. Janice, oh my gosh, I was gonna call on you anyway, if nobody raised their hand and then you raised your hand first. I knew Janice would have something to say. You gotta unmute yourself though, Janice, or Nicole will do it.
I'm unmuted. Okay, so yes, I do read about it, and I have a sister-in-law who's very involved with schools in Los Angeles. The main barriers that I'm perceiving that seem to be universal is access to technology, families, the very disparate abilities for families to like supervise distance learning, their own short difficulties with technology, the physical barriers of many of the spaces where families are living and trying to live and educate. So those are some of the main ones. And I think also the maybe the repetitiveness. It's like, how do you keep learning feeling alive when it's all done on a screen and it's hour after hour, day after day.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one of the, like, when you sort of have these assumptions, we went into this where like, yeah, technology and getting over a device is going to be an issue, but then almost like 2.0 issues come up. Like for us, one of the things we realized was like, well, a lot of our families have, you know, a tablet or something they can use. But then when they have 3 or 4 kids and they're all supposed to be going to class, like who has 4 laptops in their house, you know, that's able to do online for all of their children at once. Yeah, those are some good points. Thank you, Janice.
Okay.
Anyone else want to jump in for a comment there? It looked like Lavinia might have had something to say, but I think it would, maybe she wanted to swallow first, but you can take it away after that, Lavinia. It is a lunch and learn. I mean, come on.
I've had some interaction with my daughter-in-law who's out in Eugene, Oregon, working very hard at this. And she actually goes in and works with another teacher who's doing science, the same science class. And so she actually goes into school for that, and their 2 rooms are divided from each other. I think she's probably doing a very good job. I've heard from my daughter, who knows what goes on in Acton, that the parents there are very high expectations, and they just feel like, well, they're just not doing this right. What's wrong with these teachers? And so, and I also heard from my sister's son, who's in Whitefish, Montana. He felt the same way. He said, oh, these teachers just aren't doing what they should be doing. I don't expect this will happen at all to you.
Well, no, I mean, I think that the reality of that is that like when parents signed up for their kids to go to schools, the schools were able to say, this is the kind of school we are. This is what we'll offer. This is what it will be like. And now all of a sudden they're saying, well, we have a whole new school and we've developed it in a flash, and come on board with us, you know? So I think there actually has been a lot of iterations to make it work for people, and we have definitely been reaching out to parents to find out what's working for them and what's not working and what they want as supports, because you know they're the clients we're working with the kids to help them do it at home. So it's especially when you think of the fact that we've got, you know, 4-year-olds to 17-year-olds, you know, it's very hard for a 4-year-old to do distance learning by themselves, right? We're really relying on partnership with the parents at that level. Any other thoughts or comments? Yeah, I see Ms. Stearns down there.
So I have a 3rd grader in Newton schools, and I will say that while that Newton was pretty slow to get their, you know, distance learning model up and running, now I actually feel quite happy with the daily lessons and assignments that he's getting from his teacher and the interactions that she's, you know, setting up for the kids via Zoom. What I'm really struggling with is he's a 3rd grade boy, and he just, you know, needs a lot of cajoling and support and tech help to accomplish his work. And so that means my husband or I, both of whom are, you know, trying to do our full-time jobs, have to do that. And we have a 4-year-old who basically has now become a non-priority in terms of academic learning, at least, so that we can just do what we need to do with the 3rd grader. So I can just imagine, you know, more kids, more school-age kids, and, you know, maybe only at 1 parent instead of 2. Lots of challenges.
Yeah, a lot of challenges for sure. And don't worry, it's kind of like Vegas, what stays in the Zoom will stay here. So we won't let your 4-year-old know that you said you've deprioritized him entirely. We'll keep that here. But that is the reality. You've got to make some choices. I mean, that's the thing we're trying to do as a school too, right? We've had to make choices. You know, for instance, in the lower school, we tried to do a whole bunch of things at first. We said, this is too much. What are the most important things that we need to get right now, the most important things to put in front of the kids? So the same challenge you're saying as a parent, we're struggling with as school administrators to make those decisions. Any last burning thoughts before we move on?
This is Bob Melzer. I'm on the phone, if that makes sense.
Yes, that does.
I think one of the issues is there are a lot of people, parents at Neighborhood House and at other schools within Boston who are dependent for day care, which in fact is school, okay, right, for their kids, or they can't go back to work. And what are we going to do to make it so poorer families who need the money, desperately need the money, okay, have the ability to go back to work when they are permitted, okay, and at the same time we provide some kind of control for their kids, okay. So I think that's a critical question. And then what are the mechanics if we find that the virus is not gone and we have to keep our distance? You can't keep 6 feet apart in a class of 20, right? You may be in a class of 10, but how's that going to work out? So those are the things that are concerning me.
Yeah, those are some super big issues that are definitely coming up for us down the park, and you're kind of taking that much higher level view, almost the Governor Baker view there for us. But that's definitely been a concern we've been talking about too, is how can they open up the workplace if kids have to stay home still? They've got to somehow coordinate that, because as you said, if you can't leave your 4-year-old at home if you've got to go to work, they've got to be able to do that. We've been doing some future planning for that as well. I don't know if Kate, if you want to comment on that, or.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Bob, as you can imagine, a lot of what we were doing originally was focused on getting the infrastructure for this period up and running, and we've recently turned our attention to sort of how do we safely reopen, safely both for our students and our staff and our families, and what does that look like? The Department of Public Health and the State Department of Education are beginning to develop some guidance. We'll continue to work on that. It's not ready for sort of the spotlight just yet, but we are working very hard behind the scenes, and I can imagine us scheduling a future lunch and learn to really, really dive into that topic and share our thinking with our friends.
Yeah, so one of the things, we did a sort of mini version of this for some of our board members a while ago, and what they said was, Sean, just show us the examples with the kids and the teachers. So I'm going to jump into that now to show you actually sort of some of the things we've been doing. I'm going to talk a little bit about examples in lower school, middle school, and high school kind of throughout. It might take me a little while to get through them all. So if you have a comment or a question, it might just be best to put it in the chat, or you could just jot it down. And then after I kind of show you the whole overview, then we'll open it up for a broader discussions and your reactions. But I don't want to just stop after each one because it might break our flow. And you know, Miss Morell up there in the corner, she talked about the norms earlier. So you got to make sure you adhere to the norms, because if you don't adhere to the norm, I'm gonna start sharing my screen. Okay, are you guys ready for that? Host, disable my participant screen sharing. Come on, host. Give me some screen sharing abilities. Let's try again. All right. All right, so this is what's going to happen if you don't adhere to the norms. You're going to have to go to the principal's website. It's our virtual punishment. Little joke for you. Because we don't have many behavioral problems in school right now because everybody's at home with their parents. All right, so overview, just a little overview I wanted to share with you. Well, you may have been hearing about this a little bit. You can see this example of a Zoom classroom here as a visual, and you're in one right now. But a lot of what people have been talking about in terms of this remote and distance learning is different types of either synchronous or asynchronous learning. So synchronous learning is basically like when it's synced up at the same time. So right now we're in synchronous learning. I am literally teaching you about what's happening. You're paying attention. You can ask me questions in the chat. I can give you real-time answers. I could give you a little assignment. I could give you feedback on it right now. That would be all synchronous. Asynchronous is when we're doing that at different times. So a couple of people emailed me earlier and they said, I'd love to see the lunch and learn, but I'm not gonna be able to be there real time. We said, don't worry, we're gonna be recording it. You can watch it later on. And so a lot of our, the platform you've been hearing also that where people are using for school is the Google Classroom. So everybody kind of has done versions to develop that. You may have been hearing about it yourself in general. This is basically where you're putting all of your sort of asynchronous learning. So it's a way to organize all the assignments and material for the kids in the different classrooms. So I'm going to just give you one example of that now. And I'm going to go back to big screen. So we're in US History Google Classroom. So this is kind of what the format looks like. And you can see this, what they call here is the stream. So this is if you're just streaming information to the kids. So you can see here, Ms. Ventricelli gave a reminder to them, reminder that we have Zoom class today. So she's just giving them a little heads up. Over here, you can see when assignments are due, what number are due. You can also see she might give them some tips. Down here, she said, you'll need to know how to annotate a PDF throughout the virtual learning together. So watch this video to know how to do that. So in the class, we're going to be doing this. You need to know this. Here's my tip ahead of time. And then the kids can go into their classwork section and see all of it really well organized. And one of the things we've been trying to do is make sure our district has everything very organized for all the kids and parents. My own kid is going to some classes. Some are in Google Meet, some are in Zoom. Some of them are using the stream. Some of them are using the classwork. It's all a little disconnected. So we've been trying to make that very, very clear for people. So you can see here, here's the week. Here's the assignments, and actually you can see them so numbered by the ones you have to do, when they're due. And also you can also see if you see an A next to an assignment, that's actually an assignment that's been accommodated. So for special ed students, we're making sure we're still giving them either modified or accommodated work if that's necessary. You can even look at like, so here if you go down, so they had the letter to Birmingham jail was due. Here's an example of it. The kid would click on the assignment, it would open up, give them directions. So here she's saying she wants you to highlight in red and annotate as you're reading. She's giving them an audio recording of Dr. King doing this speech. They listen to that first, and then they would have to, just in this assignment here, they annotate each of those. So you can see how this actually looks pretty similar to what you'd think of as regular classwork in school. And the reason why, obviously, it's asynchronous in that sense is that the kids can do it anytime they want, right? So they can do it at 11 o'clock at night, they can do it at 7 in the morning, but they've got to get it due by, say, Thursday at 4 for the teachers to grade it and give feedback. Now I'm just going to go through sort of different examples. So that Google Classroom format is used in our lower school, middle school, and our high school to organize assignments for the kids. And I just want to give you a few more examples from that. So looking at, if you look at an early elementary calendar, so to support the parents at home, we've organized for like the kindergarten students. We have K1 and we have K2, so 4 and 5-year-olds in our first grade as well. Basically, every week they get a new calendar of everything they should be doing. So you can see here, they should go on Raz Kids for reading, which is like kind of, you can imagine like mini little books you can read. Lexia, which helps them with their phonemic awareness and phonics. And then they go to Dreambox, and Dreambox is where they do their math practice. So those are all online. And then they also have synchronous learning where they're going to Zoom classes. So from 12:30 to 1 or 1:15, so half hour, 45 minutes, they have a Zoom class where they do read alouds, sight words, other read alouds. Here you can see on Wednesday they had a guest speaker to do a read aloud to make it a little more engaging for the children. I think Anna Meyering is planning on being a guest speaker coming up in a little bit, so we'll see. And then you can also see they provide parents sort of the base level of what needs to be done, as well as all the different enrichment activities. So here's other computer games you could go on. Here's household activities, have a set of 10 toys. Ask your child which toy is first, which is last, start using those cardinal numbers like 3rd and 4th. They got writing activities, more phonemic parents, art activities, and they even do enrichment activities around social studies. So they've been learning about bees and pollination, as well as trying to change the world and how bees support the production of the world. So if you want later, you can go on here and you can learn how to be the change and learn about pollination and help change the world. So that's an example of in a kindergarten calendar. And then, as I said, there was those Zoom classes for the read alouds. And in all the way up until 1st grade, we're still doing read aloud synchronously. We are recording them, so if parents can't get on, they can watch them later. But read alouds are really like a gateway to developing deep comprehension of text for kids. So it's important for us to keep doing that. If they're only reading at the basic little level book, they're not getting that higher level of comprehension they can get. It's also a great way to connect with the teacher, as well as the fact that it can move some of the curriculum forward. So here's an example of our 1st grade teacher, and they've been in a Tall Tales unit. So I'm just going to show you a little bit about her reading. And one of the things you'll see she does is she sort of drops in some embedded definitions, but she also kind of makes it interactive by she gives the kids assignments like, if you hear this, give me a thumbs up. So she's looking at all the kids, we're only looking at her. All right, let's take a moment here. And Molly, I can see you now in my little window over here. So you're going to give me a thumbs up if you can hear Kate.
Howdy, partners. Today, we are going to be reading about Sally Ann, Thunder Ann, Whirlwind Crockett. And if that ain't a name, I don't know what is. She has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 parts of her name. It's a long name.
It's a lot of name. So you can see she's kind of getting into the character there and reading. And then she's doing another one about John Henry here. And if I make that big for you.
To go to bed. It was peeping out. It was looking out from behind the moon's skirts, trying to catch a glimpse of this newborn baby. Give me a thumbs up if you hear some exaggerations about this story. Anytime you hear an exaggeration, that means a little bit of a white lie. You're going to give me a thumbs up.
And you may be surprised to tell you, but that's not her natural accent. That's her putting on her personality. So still doing a great job trying to keep it engaging and interactive from home. And then here I'm going to show you an example, another example from first grade. Once I press escape and can get to it, here we go. So this is actually a Zoom classroom, so where they're doing synchronous learning. The kids are all coming together and they're doing a math lesson. Like I told you before, they do some of their own paced math stuff, either in packets or on Dreambox, but this is an opportunity for them to come together as a class, both to see each other and to work on some of the math skills they've been doing. And in kindergarten, a lot of what they're doing is about how to visualize and set up the problem and understand it. So here's their problem here. I'll make it a little bigger for you. And then you can read it, and then I'll play you a little bit here.
I see a lot of parents are with us helping out. Thank you guys so much.
Now you're going to be so impressed with how talented your children are.
Yeah, so one of the things that we again, I was saying how like you sort of realize there's a challenge and then you realize there's an extra challenge after you start doing it, right? Is that you can do, it's very easy to do synchronous learning with a 7th grader or 11th grader. You say, just show up with your teacher at this time, send them an invite. Whereas actually to do a early elementary synchronous learning, you actually need 3 people to sync up because you need the parent, the kid, and the teacher, because it's very hard for a 4-year-old to figure out how to navigate this by themselves. But so the way this works here is that they're doing their problems on their own. You can see them on the side. Then they're going to actually share how they illustrated it. And then they're going to come to a key point by using a couple different examples. So I'm just going to zoom ahead here. That's kind of a pun there, but I didn't even notice it. And so here you can see they've already worked through, kids have done their different illustrations. This is one kid's representation of the problem. And they used hearts because they couldn't find little pieces of gold, but 11 pieces of gold in the pot, 5 more pieces fell in the gold. How many pieces do they have? And so this was Gabe's representation, and they're talking about how did he show 2 groups. So the big thing they were coming to is that we can draw a line to show 2 groups, that like when we're showing a representation, we've got to separate our groups. And this is one strategy he used. So you can see here.
His hand was raised to answer that last question.
Oh, got it. Okay, I'm going to lower your hand then. Thank you. Ada, do you have something to add?
Can you just do a space, not a line?
Yeah, sometimes we do a space. You're right. But today I wanted you to see how Gabe drew a line. So if some of you use a space, maybe you can add a line today. Or if you use a space because you know that space can show 2 different groups, that's okay too.
So I like that little tidbit right there as an example of how like that student is actually showing some learning of her own, right? She's like, I understand the space, you can divide them by a line, but I'm also just using a physical space. Is that okay? The teacher's adapting, saying, yes, that works well, but I'm just trying to point out a really important point here. And then what I love is at the end, this is all about pieces of gold and falling off the rainbow, and then 5 more fell in the pot. So of course, at the end, they get into a debate about where did all this gold come from and where is it going to. So let me show you, skip ahead to that real quick. And one of the things you can see here, just as a visual, is we're getting really good attendance on a lot of these. So you can see there's a lot of people here. You can see over here, there's a parent in the background of some of these classes that are giving them support. Here you can see that actually this is the primary teacher and the secondary teacher also there to support as well. And in this case, this woman right here is actually the academic dean. So she's observing the class to be able to give the teacher feedback about the lesson and the instruction afterwards. So just as we did in our regular classrooms where we'd go in the classrooms, observe teaching and give back instructional feedback, we're still trying to do that virtually as well.
I just want to say that the gold was on the rainbow and then it fell into the pot.
I agree with you. Thank you, Amari. Andrew. Oh, hold on, Andrew. It's not letting me unmute you. Hold on 1 second, sweetie. Oh, there you go. Go ahead.
I think it fell into the leprechaun's pot.
So here they're having a debate about where does it go when it falls off? Does it go into the leprechaun's pot? Does it come off the rainbow? Also, as I was saying, and some of this is academic, but some of it is also social emotional, those connections with the kids, with the teachers, and that's a good example where they're still just having those kind of real conversations you would have with a 4 and 5-year-old in class. So now, the other thing I want to show you was another example of what they did in 4th grade, which just paralleling what I was telling you before is an example of sort of the asynchronous learning. So he gave all the students different assignments to continue working on their newspaper. So each of the kids wrote different sections of the newspaper, which I can show you here briefly. So this is the 4th grade's March edition. They've actually just came out with the April edition, but I put this one in before, so I left it here for you. Where they celebrated Women's History Month. Each of them wrote different articles that they compiled. You can see they have a coloring section for the kids, quotes about Women's History Month. They even have some jokes here. So what does that say? What do you call a dinosaur that's sleeping? So Dom, I'm going to ask you at the end of the thing what your guess is for the answer to that joke as we scroll down. Here you can see they're still writing about sports, even though we don't have any sports because they love sports. They interviewed a famous person. In this case, it was Miss McCarthy, their principal. Got some questions about that. One of their questions for her was, cats or dogs? What do you prefer? They also add artists. And then these are the reporters, as well as they did some fun pictures of them as kids, so kids got to guess that. All right, Dom, you got to unmute yourself. What's the answer to the question?
Okay.
What do you call a dinosaur that's sleeping?
Holy. A lazy dinosaur.
Lazy dinosaur, that's our guess. Okay, we'll see. We'll scroll down to the answer page and we see, oh, it's a dinosaur.
Oh!
Very close, very close. All right.
Makes me a dummy snore.
So, and I think this is also a good example of how, like, this is really good academic instruction, but also it's a way to make sure the kids stay engaged and keep it interesting for them. So now we're going to take a trip up to the middle school. Let me just escape here. All right, so in the middle school, this is an example of our 7th grade science lesson, and this is sort of a combination of what we're talking about. So she's actually done a video Google recording of her lesson that then kids can watch at any time and then do the work separately. So this is Miss Eisenbaum in 7th grade here.
Good morning, 7th grade scholars. I hope you all are healthy and staying safe. Your homework that's due are assignments numbers 1, 2, and 3. If you have not already completed those 3 assignments, please pause this one and complete and submit those assignments before you start this, because we'll be starting a new topic. Your homework due is this assignment number 4. Our aim for this assignment is to obtain knowledge on a habitat's biodiversity, why biodiversity is important to humans and the health of our planet, and understand what factors affect biodiversity in an ecosystem.
And one of the things I liked how she did there, see how she embedded in, like, if you haven't done this, you need to do this. Like, we know it's difficult for the kids to navigate this online platform. And so at multiple times, we're sort of giving them tips and tricks to like remember things, to do this first, which is why you also saw Ms. Ventricelli in the stream had like, don't forget this. And now even in the video, she's like, pause me and go do this if you haven't yet.
If you have not already completed Part 1, the Biodiversity Brainstorm, and Part 2, the Bill Nye video and questions, please pause before going further in this webcast. Before we get into more about biodiversity, I just want to make sure we are all on the same page with two key pieces of vocabulary. A habitat is a place where an organism lives and that provides the things it needs to survive. And we are going to be defining biodiversity as the number of different species in a given area.
So you can see, so that would be sort of the lesson piece that would be instructing them, and then they would actually also have hang on one second. So then this would be the example of the actual worksheet that they would be doing as they would be going along. So where's biodiversity? What does the word diversity mean? Here's questions from the video you watched. Here's a little clue from her, highlight the correct questions. And then scrolling down, here's notes you would fill in, etc. And then they would rename this with their name on it and then submit it. That would give them a grade, and she'd be able to grade it and give them feedback to them. So that's another example from middle school, and obviously asynchronous. And then we're going to take a trip up to high school and see a quick few lessons about high school. So this is our 10th grade math here. And I'll just show you a little bit and then talk about it. So here we go.
Awesome, thanks, Serge. Okay.
Did you also leave it as 8 over sine 46?
For sure, 100%. You can just box that up. Absolutely. Good question, good question. Okay.
So he is casting the work that he is showing them so they can all see that, while they also have that paper and are doing the work themselves. And then he asked them questions. So what would be, and like, okay, yeah, 46 is the in the corner here. What does that equal? 11.1. That's what she was saying. Couldn't you just write it as 8 over sine 46 here? So
the last one we actually cannot do. Automatic respect from your math teacher. If you can tell me why we can't do that last one. It's a trick question.
There's no right angle.
Sorry, you're killing it. There's no right angle, okay? So SOHCAHTOA doesn't work. This is our new stuff today. The first two, those were review problems. You might not remember them, and that's okay. It's been a long time since we've done them. But they work because...
So here's what we're talking about, the SOHCAHTOA, the sine, cosine, tangent. So they've learned some of that in school, and this is also a good example of how we're making sure we're reviewing the major standards that they learned in school, while also, if possible, moving forward with standards that connect to those so they can still continue to learn and actually advance. So here he's saying, this is what we've done as a review. You nailed it. We haven't figured this out. We're going to need a
because there's a right angle. It's called right triangle trigonometry. This last one does not work. It is not a right angle. We need a new rule or method to make it work. And that is what, today is about. Our aim, we will be able to use trigonometry to find missing values when we don't have a right angle.
So they're doing that work led into them discovering what is the aim. This is, now we have to figure out a new thing. How do we find the missing values when it's not a right triangle? I'll give you two more high school examples. So here we're in 9th grade math. And this was actually an older one from kind of like when they were first getting started, but I think it helps show a couple interesting points.
So we're going to actually practice creating one on my whiteboard. I have a little whiteboard attached to my front door. We're going old school here. And we're going to actually create one.
Sorry, I'm just going to cut in real quick. Just so that you could see Miss Mans and like the board and make it really big instead of seeing all of us. If you go to the top of your screen, it should say speaker view or gallery view. If you click on speaker view, you'll see Miss Mans bigger, okay?
Perfect.
So a couple things about that. One, obviously you can see she's made this like ad hoc. I'm going to do a whiteboard behind me, kind of show you things. And then we've moved to trying to get tablets for everyone so they can screencast and show their work in math particularly. You can also see how, again, this is a special ed teacher and the regular teacher in the classes together to support the kids. And in this case, she was actually supporting around technology pieces like Nicole was telling you, like this is the best way for you to be able to see this information. And oftentimes if you're the person teaching and trying to navigate like I'm doing between all the things you're clicking and what you want to say, it's actually hard to keep track of what the kids' questions are. So the second teacher will oftentimes monitor the chat and be able to answer questions for kids or raise things if they notice that something's being confusing for the kids that the other teacher might not notice because they're so busy trying to be the lead. And we'll just keep going with, here we go, Miss Mans for a little bit.
So is that everybody all set with that? You can raise your hand if you don't have me in speaker view. We're good? Okay, so we should be looking at our classwork and it should say dot plot interaction with new material. I'm going to share my screen so we can look at it all together. But you should be seeing, I'm gonna just click over this problem. And so we have a data set and we wanna organize this into a dot plot like we just analyzed. So let's talk through what this would look like. How many people responded to this question? How many people responded to this question? Kellyanne, how many people responded to this question? You can talk too. You're on unmute.
Hello.
Let's read. Look at the screen, or you can look at me or the screen. How many students responded to this question?
I don't know.
What screen are you looking at?
The same screen you're looking at.
The interaction with new material question?
Yeah.
Okay, can you read that top line for us?
22 students.
Ah, there we go, 22 students. Thank you, Kellyanne.
So what I like about this example is it's, although not necessarily instructional yet as they get into the math, it's showing how even some of the techniques we're using in normal school where a kid's going to say, I don't know. And you also realize that she called on Kellyanne without him raising his hand. She just cold called him. I expect all my students to be participating. I expect them all to be paying attention. And then when he was like, I don't know, don't call me, move on, she stuck with him until he was able to like figure out what it was she was talking about. So you can see that even through the Zoom sort of in the virtual space, because of the relationships and the techniques that teachers have already used in the year, they're able to maintain a lot of that with the kids, which is great. And then for our last high school example, I was going to show you Español. So we're going to do a little Spanish here. This is Spanish 1. They've been learning about poder, which means to be able to, or I can, I can't, I'm able to, I'm not able to. So there's your framing. And the voice you'll hear will be the teacher.
In infinitive. Okay. Now, add details if you can. How often do you do this? Who do you do it with? ¿Con quién? ¿Dónde? Where? ¿Cómo? How? Okay. So we want to move on from simple statements like I can do this. I want you to add details like when, cuándo, con quién, with whom, etc. Okay.
So one of the things, again, sort of like what I said before, but I think it's an interesting point. So they've already done poder. They've learned a little bit about this before, and now he's trying to expand their ability, even in a virtual space. I want you to be able to do this at a much more mastery level, add details, add adjectives, add where, add when. And so then he actually releases them to do some independent work, just as we would in class, and then brings them back together a little bit later to talk about.
Fill out the chart, and also, once you've filled out your chart, pick one and share it in the chat so we can go through some together. After you've filled out your 5 things you can do, write them in the chat so that we can share together.
So what he's saying is like, so they now have open their Google Classroom assignment where they're typing in their answers. And he's also saying, and for accountability purposes, I'd like you to take right now one of your best sentences and put it in the chat so we can all see what you're doing. Both it's about sharing of the information, but it's also accountability. You're in my class. I want to see what you wrote. Put it in right now. So let's go till they're done their independent time up here.
Okay. Charlotte came up with an excellent sentence. Charlotte dice, Yo puedo beber jugo de naranja porque es mi favorito. Yo puedo beber, I can drink, jugo de naranja porque es mi favorito, because it's my favorite. All right, excelente, Charlotte. Okay, remember, you're filling out your classwork, but also doing what Charlotte just did and writing me a sentence in the chat. Okay, make sure you're letting me know in the chat one thing you can do. Oh, excelente, Ashanti. Ashanti, unmute yourself. Go ahead, read that out loud for us.
Yo puedo mantener una conversación.
Excelente. So what can you do, Ashanti?
I can hold a conversation.
Excelente. Okay, so what she says is, yo puedo mantener una conversación.
So two examples there. So one where that person put in the chat, I think Charlotte, about that she can drink orange juice. And then he highlighted that, but then he saw in the chat that she had said this, so he like unmuted her, called on her, and she had to respond. And also what I love is that she chose to say, out of all the things she could say she's able to, she said, I'm able to maintain a conversation in Spanish. So starting to feel a little pride and ability to actually learn Spanish and be able to speak it, which is great. And then as a last thing, one of the things we talked about was like, we're trying to make sure we reinforce the most important skills, and we're trying to move forward with some of the curriculum to make sure it's connected with the students' learning and they can keep progressing. But at the same time, we've got to make it engaging and have reasons for them to come. So partially it's they've got relationships. They know that the kids know the teachers now, which is great. But then also trying to think of the engaging ways to get them involved. So for instance, making the newspaper together as an example. And then in 8th grade math, where the kids don't always want to come and do math problem after math problem, she actually gave them a great little challenge where she told them to take their social media app, which they love, called TikTok, which I imagine not a lot of you are on, but you can imagine it as like the kids' fun Facebook. But they make these little bitty videos and then post them about different things. So she had a challenge, which was like, I want you to make a TikTok video about math. So here's one of our 8th graders doing a TikTok video, and they're very short, so you gotta pay attention because they're usually under like 15 or 30 seconds. So here she's put in these things. So Miss Kim, scholars, you got this. That's what Miss Kim's saying. And then here's the challenging problem she's giving them. He giving up. Miss Kim encouraging me. He trying again. He finishing the quiz. So Miss Kim helped her out and she was able to finish her math quiz, and she got to make a fun little like online TikTok video, which they love. So I know many of you may now feel like this person here, let's see, where you've been, honey, it's been 45 minutes. I don't think he's going to call on you as you're staring at your screen. But now I showed you a little bit about sort of some of the synchronous and asynchronous learning we're doing, some of the stuff we're doing in middle school, lower school, from read alouds to geometry classes. So I just want to open it up to sort of thoughts, questions, comments, reactions. And I'm going to stop sharing before Nicole reminds me to do that. All right. Welcome back, everyone. Nice to see you. I couldn't see you all before. So yeah, just any comments, questions, thoughts, reactions? Either raise your hand or just call out.
I'll go first before anyone else jumps in. I just wanted to say thank you, Sean, for putting this presentation together and all the work that you've put into it. I did get a couple of questions in advance, so I think we have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions. I will ask this question that I received in advance, and then maybe we'll do another question after that. I know we want to end promptly at 1 o'clock, so you all can get on to your other meetings. But a couple of questions I received in advance have to do with attendance, participation, and sort of like family communications. So how are you keeping track of student participation, and what systems are in place to let parents know if a student is behind or not participating?
Okay. Actually, for interest time, I had that as one of the things we could talk about, but I didn't put it here. So I'll share it with you now as one option. So if you can see here, this is one of our family communication sheet for a 6th grader here, and it tells them all the assignments they had and whether they were complete or not. It also then tells them if they attended class or they didn't attend class. And then you can also put
Can
down.
Can you share your screen, Sean?
Oh, I'm not sharing. I'm just showing it to myself on really big. That doesn't make any sense. Good point. So this is what I was just talking to you about that you couldn't see, but now you can. So here's their weekly report for distance learning. And actually this was an example of one, we tried to roll things out very methodically in the school. So at first we had them do packets, then we had them do 1 assignment, then 3 assignments, then 3 assignments plus go to Zoom classes. And so this is an example right before we started the Zoom classes, but so the attendance would also be on it as well. But here is their completed assignments. They basically get 3 assignments a week. They're posted on Monday when it's due, and then they're all due by Thursday at different days. And then if they're not done on Thursday, we actually reach out to them to make up the work on Friday as well. And then you can also post examples here. But we're actually doing really, really well for attendance for all of our schools right now, actually. I think partially was because we transitioned very quickly. Some schools waited until many weeks to say, now we want you to come to a Zoom class or something. And kids were like, what do you mean? That's not what I've been doing. You know, I've been on COVID break. Like, don't mess with my schedule. Whereas basically a couple days afterwards, we're like, nope, here's going to be the expectation. We're going to keep it going. We are going to be methodical about rolling it out in a way that's doable for you. But we want to maintain that connection to the school and doing schoolwork for as long as possible right away. So therefore, like we just had like yesterday in the Zoom classes for middle school, there was 95% attendance, which is basically as good or better than any average school ever has in a real brick building. So we feel really good about that. Any other questions or comments from lower school to middle school to high school or anything that I showed you guys?
I think we have time for one more question. I know, Janice, you typed in a question. Do you want me to unmute you or do you want me to read it? I'll read it. Okay. Janice's question is, as child care centers open up and parents go back to work, how will the students' work be maintained / supervised at the daycare centers?
Yeah, and I think that kind of goes back to, you know, that big picture question that Bob was asking as well, is like, what is the balance the state's going to give us around kids going to school and people going to work? We are definitely thinking about all the different possibilities. I don't know, the short answer is I don't know the answer to that question, but we are definitely planning for all the different possibilities of what might happen in September as we come back. We're already planning different summer school support programs that are going to be remote because we think that that's going to stay remote for a while. But then in September, yeah, I mean, maybe it's, you know, people coming back for half-day classes. Maybe we just have to do a lot more contactless stuff. Like we have a bunch, like right now we only have 3 or 4 lunches. Maybe we have like 10 lunches so that kids only go with their own class and they don't have connection to other classes. So we're really thinking about all the options, both health-wise and instructional, to make sure that, you know, we support the kids the best possible.
Great. We are running close on time, so I think this is a good stopping point, and that's really all the time that we have for today. If you have other questions, like Kate said earlier and Sean said, we'll be continuing to do these lunch and learns over the next few weeks and potentially over the next few months. There's a lot of topics that I think people have questions about and want to learn more about. So if you have more questions, feel free to send them to me, send them to Sean, or whoever your closest contact at Neighborhood House is, and we will try to work them into either communications or future lunch and learns moving forward. But again, I just want to thank Sean for all the work that you've done in putting this presentation together today. Let's all give Sean some spirit hands. And I just want to thank you all also for spending an hour with us today. We're trying to balance our communication with you over this time while we're all home, and so hopefully you're finding it useful and informative. And we hope to see you again in a couple of weeks at our next Lunch and Learn.
I just want to say, God bless all of you for this incredible work. It's very inspiring.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Janice. All right, everyone, take care. Have a great day. Have a great weekend.
All right, take care. Thank you, everyone.